The wind whispered through the sprawling Sad Hill Cemetery, kicking up dry leaves and dust among the crumbling gravestones. Under a merciless sun, 3 men stood still, positioned like the hands of a broken clock, frozen in time. Blondie, Angel Eyes, Tuco, 3 gunslingers, 3 motives, 1 buried treasure. Dear listeners, before we move forward, I have request please watch whole story, hit watch hours. The wide, circular arena of graves around them seemed designed for this final confrontation, almost as if fate itself had built this battlefield. Blondie, the calmest of the 3, adjusted his serape and let his hand hover loosely near his holster. His eyes, cold and sharp beneath the brim of his weathered hat, didn't blink. To his right, Tuco squinted nervously, shifting on his feet, sweat pouring down his face. He licked his lips, breathing quick and shallow. He was out of his depth, and he knew it. Across from them stood Angel Eyes, stoic, calculating, and deadly. His black hat cast a shadow over his hollow eyes, and his fingers twitched ever so slightly. He wasn't here to hesitate. He was here to win. No one spoke. Only Ennio Morricone's haunting music filled the silence, soft, tense, pulsing like a heartbeat. The camera zoomed in on eyes, hands, mouths, holsters, eyes again. The world shrank to this moment. Nothing else existed. Each man read the others. Each man waited for a sign. The silence stretched so tight it felt like the air itself might tear. Then, a twitch, a breath, a blink. The silence didn't break. It shattered. In a heartbeat, the standoff erupted. Tuco's hand flew to his revolver. Angel Eyes went for his holster, and Blondie, as always, moved with uncanny precision. But in that critical instant, only one gun spoke. Tuco's hammer clicked uselessly. Empty chambers. His eyes widened in disbelief as he stared down at the dead weight in his trembling hand. He had been betrayed, disarmed before the duel ever began. Sweat beaded down his temples, his chest rising and falling like a cornered animal, but it was too late to panic. The game had already ended before it began. Angel Eyes was faster than most men alive, but not faster than Blondie. As he drew and raised his pistol, Blondie had already fired. One clean, precise shot rang out. The bullet found its mark with a deadly thud, tearing into Angel Eyes' chest. He stumbled, surprise and pain etched across his face. He tried to lift his arm, tried to retaliate, but another shot tore into him, this time spinning him back, his gun dropping from his fingers. Then a final shot. Blondie never left anything to chance. Angel Eyes collapsed backward into the dust, landing hard between broken gravestones. His lifeless eyes stared up at the empty sky, the outlaw reduced to silence and blood under the blazing sun. The graveyard echoed with the ringing of that final shot before settling into a haunting stillness. Tuco stood frozen, still gripping his useless weapon, blinking rapidly as his mind caught up with the betrayal. His voice stammered, "Blondie, you..." But the words trailed off. He didn't need to finish the sentence. He understood. Blondie turned slowly, lowering his smoking gun, his expression unreadable. He walked toward Tuco, calm as ever, as if the duel hadn't happened at all. His boots crunched the dry ground with every step. "You see, Tuco," Blondie finally said, voice low and steady, "there are 2 kinds of people in this world, those with loaded guns, and those who dig." Tuco's heart dropped. The sound of Blondie's boots echoed like gunshots through the graveyard as he turned his back on Tuco and strode toward the center of the cemetery. The air was thick with dust and death. Tuco stood still for a moment, stunned, then staggered after him, still clutching his empty revolver, his pride wounded deeper than any bullet could have. Blondie stopped near a grave marked Unknown, beneath a worn-out wooden cross. Around it were dozens more, stretching in every direction, tombstones bearing names long forgotten. But it was this one grave that mattered. This was the name Blondie had lied about, the one Tuco believed held the treasure. Blondie turned and tossed a worn shovel at Tuco's feet. It hit the ground with a dull thud, sending a small puff of dust into the air. Tuco looked at it, then up at Blondie. "You bastard," Tuco hissed. But Blondie didn't flinch. He only nodded toward the grave, his hand never leaving his holster. Tuco bent down slowly and grabbed the shovel, mumbling curses under his breath. He began to dig, angrily at first, then desperately, the sun baking his back, his breath turning ragged. Dirt flew in all directions as the shovel struck dry earth over and over. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with the dust on his skin, forming muddy streaks. Blondie watched, motionless. His eyes scanned the horizon, then returned to Tuco. Patient, sharp, cold. After several minutes of digging, Tuco hit something solid. Wood. His heart jumped. He dropped the shovel and fell to his knees, clawing at the dirt with his hands until the top of the coffin was visible. He tore it open like a man unwrapping salvation. Inside he found a skeleton, nothing more. Bones wrapped in rotten cloth, clutching nothing but decay. "No!" Tuco yelled, throwing his hands in the air. "You lied! You son of a—" Blondie smirked, just slightly. "I told you the wrong name," he said coolly, "but the right grave." Tuco looked up, confused, panting. Blondie tossed something through the air, a small, weathered stone with something carved on it. Tuco caught it, turned it over, and read the name etched faintly into the surface. Arch Stanton. He turned his head slowly, eyes scanning the surrounding graves. And there it was, just a few feet away. The real grave, the true prize, the gold. Tuco scrambled toward the grave marked Arch Stanton like a starving man chasing bread. His boots slipped on loose soil, but he didn't stop. He dropped to his knees and began digging again, faster, more frantic this time. Blondie stood a few feet back, arms crossed, his revolver still holstered but ready. The sun beat down mercilessly, casting long shadows across the graveyard. Tuco's breathing grew heavier with each thrust of the shovel. His hands were blistered, his arms trembling, but he didn't care. This time he was sure. This was it. After minutes of hard digging, the edge of a large wooden box emerged beneath the dirt. Tuco shouted with glee and clawed at the soil, clearing it with both hands until the top of the coffin lay bare before him. With one final grunt, he flung open the lid. Gold. Stacks of Confederate coins, glimmering bars. Tuco gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief and hunger. He reached in and lifted a handful, letting the weight of it sink into his fingers. He laughed, his voice echoing wildly through the graveyard. "We're rich, Blondie, rich! Ha, can you believe it?" But when he turned to face Blondie, the laughter stopped. Blondie was tying a noose. Tuco's smile faded instantly as the rope swayed gently from a tall wooden cross just a few feet away. "What are you doing?" Tuco asked, his voice shaky. Blondie didn't answer. He simply walked over, yanked Tuco to his feet and marched him up beneath the noose. Tuco struggled, but he was no match for Blondie's cold determination. Within seconds, the rope was around his neck. The gold sat gleaming behind him, just out of reach, like a cruel joke. Blondie walked back to the grave where the treasure had been. He grabbed a spade and began dividing the loot, organizing it into saddlebags. Tuco trembled, standing precariously on a wooden grave marker that could break at any second. His voice cracked. "Blondie!" You wouldn't. You can't." Blondie slung the saddlebags over his shoulder, turned back, and gave Tuco one last look. Then he raised his rifle. Tuco gasped, "Wait, wait, Blondie!" The rifle pointed straight at the rope. Silence again, only the sound of the wind and the creaking of the rope. Then a single shot. The shot rang out, breaking the silence like thunder. Tuco's world spun. For a moment, he thought the bullet had torn through his body. But then, nothing. No pain. He opened his eyes to see Blondie standing across from him, the smoke curling from the barrel of his rifle. Blondie had shot the rope. Tuco's body swayed with the sudden release of tension. The noose fell loose, and he dropped to his knees, gasping for air, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. His hands instinctively grabbed at his throat, massaging the raw skin where the rope had once dug into him. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He just stared at Blondie, who slowly approached, walking calmly as if nothing had happened. "I told you," Blondie said in that same cold, unwavering voice. "There are two kinds of people in this world. Those with loaded guns and those who dig." Tuco coughed, spitting out dust. His entire body trembled, from the fight, from the shock, and from the overwhelming realization. Blondie had been playing him from the start. Tuco's eyes darted to the treasure behind him, gleaming like a dream he could never touch. The gold that had promised so much wealth, now just a reminder of how much he'd lost. Blondie stood over him, looking down, his expression unreadable. "You get to live," Blondie said, offering Tuco the smallest flicker of mercy. "But not without a lesson." Tuco gritted his teeth, frustration boiling inside him. But he couldn't bring himself to argue. Blondie had won. Blondie always won. Tuco was just another fool in his game. Blondie turned and began walking away, his back to Tuco as if he'd already forgotten him. But then, Blondie stopped and glanced back, his gaze sharp and final. "Take the gold if you want, Tuco, but remember this. Not all treasure is worth the price it costs to get it." And with that, he walked away, leaving Tuco alone in the graveyard, his treasure at his feet, but his soul empty. Blondie's figure disappeared into the horizon, leaving only the wind, the gold, and the silence of a man who had learned the hardest lesson of all.